She thought she was helping a dying stranger in the rain, but by morning, the world was calling him one of the most powerful men alive. What she didn't know that night would change all of their lives forever. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, even just a little, stay glued, click like, and hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's jump right back in. Lina Morales learned early that exhaustion was safer than hope. Hope made promises it couldn't keep. Exhaustion just asked you to survive. At 27, Lina worked the graveyard shift at Haven's Diner, a narrow, chrome-edged building tucked between a gas station and a forgotten stretch of highway. The kind of place truckers stopped when they had nowhere else to go. The kind of place people passed through, but never stayed. She liked it that way. The bell above the door jingled as another customer left, boots squeaking against the freshly mopped floor. Lina wiped the counter slowly, deliberately, stretching out the task because once it was done, there would be nothing left to distract her from the quiet. Quiet was dangerous. It left space for memories. Her reflection stared back at her from the steel coffee urn, dark circles beneath tired eyes, hair pulled into a tight bun she never bothered to style. Her uniform smelled faintly of grease and burnt coffee, a scent she associated with rent paid on time and electricity that didn't get shut off. Stability, even when it was ugly, was still stability. She had learned not to ask for more. A man at the last booth snapped his fingers instead of calling her name. She flinched, then masked it instantly, walking over with a polite smile she didn't feel. "Refill," he said, not looking up. She poured the coffee without a word. Silence had become her armor. Years ago, when she'd trusted the wrong person, when she'd believed kindness meant safety, she'd learned how quickly everything could be taken. Since then, Lina kept her world small. No attachments. No risks. No second chances. When her shift finally ended, the clock blinking 2:17 a.m., she hung up her apron and stepped outside. The rain had started sometime after midnight, steady, cold, relentless. The parking lot shimmered under the flickering street lamp, puddles spreading like ink stains across the asphalt. Lina pulled her jacket tighter around herself and started toward the bus stop. That was when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A hoarse, broken gasp. She stopped. Across the lot, near the curb, a dark shape slumped beside a large SUV. At first, she thought it was someone drunk. It wouldn't have been the first time. Then she saw the movement. 2 tiny movements. Her heart stuttered. She took a step closer. Then another. And then she saw the blood. Miles away, Ethan Cole's world had already ended once tonight. The accident replayed in fragments. Headlights blinding him, the sickening crunch of metal, the scream he couldn't tell belonged to him or his wife. He remembered crawling out through shattered glass, his hands slick with blood that wasn't all his own. He remembered the silence after. Too loud. Too final. His wife was gone. And now, as he leaned weakly against the SUV, rain soaking through his clothes, he was terrified history was about to repeat itself. Ethan clutched his twins to his chest with what little strength he had left. Their cries were thin, reedy, fighting the storm. His arms trembled, not just from blood loss, but from panic clawing at his throat. He had spent his life believing preparations solved everything. Boardrooms. Contracts. Risk assessments. You plan. You control. You win. But no amount of money could teach him how to stop bleeding. No influence could rewind the last hour. He had tried calling for help. His phone lay cracked somewhere near the wreckage, useless. His vision blurred in and out, darkness creeping at the edges. "Please," he whispered to no one, his voice barely louder than the rain. "Please, not them." He bowed his head over the babies, shielding them as best he could. A man worth hundreds of millions of dollars had never felt more powerless. Lina broke into a run. She didn't think about danger, or responsibility, or how badly this could go. She dropped to her knees in the rain beside him. "Oh my God," she breathed. Up close, the blood was everywhere, soaking his shirt, streaking his hands. His skin was pale, lips tinged blue. But it was the way he held the babies that stopped her cold. Like they were the only reason he was still breathing. "Hey," she said softly, instinctively. "Hey, stay with me." His eyes lifted to hers, glassy and unfocused. "My kids," he whispered. "Please, don't let go of my kids." Something inside her cracked open. She shrugged out of her jacket, wrapping it carefully around the twins to keep them dry. Then she pressed her apron against his side, applying pressure the way she'd once been taught during a shift-long safety training she never thought she'd use. "You're not dying here," she said, firmer now. "Not tonight." He tried to nod. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but growing louder. Lena stayed there, kneeling in the rain, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. She didn't know his name, she didn't know his life, she didn't know that the man bleeding in front of her ran a global empire. All she knew was this: if she walked away now, she would never forgive herself. As the red and blue lights finally flooded the parking lot, Lena looked down at the twins, tiny fingers curling instinctively around the edge of her sleeve. And somewhere deep inside her, a truth settled in, heavy and unavoidable. This night wasn't just going to change his life. It was going to change hers too. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment, this rain-soaked collision between two broken worlds, was only the beginning. The ambulance doors slammed shut with a hollow finality that echoed inside Lena's chest. She climbed in without thinking. Rainwater dripped from her hair onto the sterile white floor as paramedics worked fast around them. One cut away the man's blood-soaked shirt. Another checked vitals. The twins were gently transferred from his arms into a heated carrier, their cries sharp and frightened, cutting through the mechanical beeping of monitors. "No," the man croaked, reaching out weakly. "Please, oh." "They're right here," Lena said quickly, her voice steady even though her hands trembled. She leaned close so he could hear her over the sirens. "They're safe. I promise." His fingers brushed hers before falling limp. "Sir," a paramedic called. Lena's breath caught. For a terrifying second, she thought she'd just watched him die. Then the monitor blipped again. A heartbeat. Fragile but there. She released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. The emergency room was chaos. Bright lights. Rushing feet. Voices overlapping in urgent bursts of medical language Lena barely understood. She stood pressed against a wall, soaked, shaking, watching as they wheeled him away from her. "Wait, where are they taking the babies?" she asked a nurse, panic rising. "NICU," the nurse replied gently. "They were born premature?" I don't know," Lena admitted. "I just found them like that." The nurse nodded, already moving. "They'll be okay. You did the right thing." Those words hit Lena harder than she expected. You did the right thing. No one had said that to her in a long time. She sank into a plastic chair in the waiting area, her clothes sticking uncomfortably to her skin. Her jacket, now wrapped around the twins, was gone. So was the man. She should leave. She knew that. She had no reason to stay. No obligation. Her shift was over. This wasn't her life. But her feet wouldn't move. Minutes stretched into an hour. Finally, a doctor approached, a tired man with kind eyes and a clipboard tucked under his arm. "Are you family?" he asked. Lena hesitated. "No. I'm just the one who found them." The doctor studied her for a moment, then softened. "The babies are stable. Cold and frightened, but stable. They're fighters." Relief flooded her so fast it made her dizzy. "And the father?" she asked quietly. The doctor exhaled. "He lost a lot of blood. Internal injuries. We're taking him into surgery now." Her stomach dropped. "Is he going to live?" The doctor didn't answer right away. "We're doing everything we can." Time passed differently after that. Lena sat through the night, knees drawn to her chest, watching families come and go. She learned the sound of hope breaking. The sound of relief collapsing into sobs. At some point, a nurse brought her a cup of coffee she didn't remember asking for. "You can see the babies," the nurse said gently. "If you want." Lena stood on unsteady legs and followed her into the NICU. The twins lay side by side in incubators, impossibly small. Tubes and wires covered their tiny bodies, chests rising and falling in shallow, determined breaths. Lena pressed her hand against the glass. "I don't know your names," she whispered, voice cracking. "But you scared me half to death." One of them twitched, fingers curling instinctively. Her eyes burned. She had sworn never to let herself care like this again. Yet here she was. The surgery lasted 6 hours. When the doctor finally returned, Lena was half asleep in her chair, head resting against the wall. "He made it," the doctor said. She jolted upright. "He did. Yes. He's still critical, but he's stable for now." Relief washed over her, followed immediately by guilt. Why did this matter so much to her? She wasn't his wife. She wasn't their mother. She was a waitress who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. Or the right place at the wrong time. When Ethan finally woke, the world felt wrong. Muted. Heavy. Like he was underwater. Pain radiated through his body, sharp and unrelenting. His mouth was dry, throat raw. "My kids," he rasped. "They're alive," a voice said. He turned his head slowly and froze. She sat beside his bed, hair damp, eyes tired but focused entirely on him. "You," he whispered. "Me," she replied softly. "You scared me." Confusion flickered across his face. "Why are you here?" She hesitated. "Because someone needed to be." His eyes filled, and he turned his face away, ashamed of the tears that escaped anyway. "I failed them," he said hoarsely. "I should have protected them better. I should have." "Stop," Lena said, more firmly than she meant to. "You're alive. They're alive. That matters." He laughed weakly. "You don't know me." "No," she admitted. "But I know what it looks like when someone is holding on with everything they have left." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, maybe. Or shared damage. A nurse interrupted gently. "You should rest. Visiting hours are." "I'll go," Lena said quickly, standing. She paused at the door. "Thank you," Ethan said. "For not walking away." Lena swallowed. "You would have done the same." But even as she said it, she wasn't sure she believed it. She left the hospital as dawn broke, sky pale and quiet. Her clothes were still damp. Her body ached. But something inside her felt different. He didn't know her name. She didn't know his. Yet their lives were now tangled by blood, rain, and 2 tiny heartbeats fighting to survive. And neither of them understood yet just how powerful that connection would become. As Lena stepped onto the bus, her phone buzzed with a breaking news alert she didn't see. A name. A photo. A headline about a missing CEO. And the truth, when it came, would change everything. If this moment stirred something in you, tap like and comment your reaction. Because from here on, the story only gets deeper. Lena didn't return to the hospital the next day. Or the day after that. She told herself it was practical. Logical. She had shifts to cover, rent to pay. A life that demanded motion even when her heart wanted stillness. She reminded herself, over and over, that she wasn't part of that man's world. Whatever that world was. Yet every night as she wiped counters and refilled cups, her eyes kept drifting to the door. Half expecting him to walk in. Half afraid he would. She didn't even know his name. That helped, she told herself. Names made things real. Ethan woke each morning with the same panic clawing at his chest. Before the pain registered. Before the machines reminded him where he was. "My kids," he would whisper. The nurses learned quickly. They'd reassure him gently, will him to the NICU when he was stable enough, let him sit for short moments beside the incubators. He memorized every breath, every twitch of his twins' tiny bodies. But there was something else he watched for. Her. She never came. He told himself it didn't matter. She was a stranger. A passing kindness. A good deed done and finished. But the bed beside his felt emptier without her quiet presence. Without the way she'd looked at him, not with fear or expectation, but with understanding. The outside world didn't stay quiet for long. By the 4th day, the hospital floor was crawling with people in suits. Security tightened. Nurses whispered. Ethan's assistant, Daniel, finally stood at his bedside, relief etched deep into his face. "You disappeared," Daniel said. "The board is in chaos. The press is losing their minds." Ethan closed his eyes. "I don't care." "That's not an option," Daniel replied gently. "You're not just a father. You're ill. The word hit him like a slap. The identity he'd built. The armor he wore. He hated how heavy it felt now. Lena learned the truth by accident. She was wiping down the counter when the television above the booths flickered to a breaking news segment. Missing Techo found alive after highway accident. A photo appeared on the screen. Her stomach dropped. The man from the rain. The blood. The wins. Suddenly framed in headlines and net worth and stock prices. Her chest tightened. Of course. Of course he was someone important. People like him didn't drift into diners at 2 in the morning unless fate was playing cruel games. She turned away from the screen, hands shaking. This was exactly why she didn't get involved. Ethan was discharged a week later, against medical advice and under suffocating security detail. The twins remained in the NICU, but progress was steady. Strong lungs. Strong hearts. He spent his days torn between conference calls and hospital visits, between spreadsheets and soft blankets. But something inside him resisted the return to normal. He couldn't forget the woman who'd knelt in the rain with him when nothing else mattered. So one night, against every warning, he sent his driver away. He walked. The air was cold. The city quiet. And somehow, without consciously deciding to, his feet carried him back to that diner. The bell jingled. Lena looked up and froze. For a split second, she saw him as he'd been that night. Bleeding. Broken. Desperate. Then she saw the suit. The posture. The way the room subtly shifted around him. She felt exposed. You shouldn't be here, she said before she could stop herself. I know, he replied softly. But I needed to see you. She crossed her arms. Why? To say thank you, he said. Properly. She laughed, sharp and humorless. Pretty sure the hospital bill covers that. He flinched. That's not what I meant. Silence stretched between them. I saw the news, she said finally. Congratulations. It's not a congratulations kind of thing, he replied. I never wanted you to find out like that. Or at all, she said. His gaze held hers. I didn't hide it. I just didn't think it mattered. It always matters, she said. People like you don't need saving. I wasn't asking to be saved, he said quietly. I was asking for help. The words landed heavy. They stood on opposite sides of the counter now, a line drawn between them by class, fear, and unspoken pain. You should go, Lena said. This isn't a good idea. For who? He asked. For me, she replied. I don't belong in your world. He stepped closer. You belong wherever you choose to stand. She shook her head. That's easy to say when doors open for you. He had no answer for that. As if summoned by tension, 2 men in suits entered the diner, scanning the room. Mr. Cole, one said, urgent. You can't be here. Lena stiffened. Mr. Cole. The name echoed in her head. Ethan looked at her, apology in his eyes. I'll come back, he said. If you let me. She didn't respond. He turned and left, the bell ringing behind him like a warning. Lena leaned against the counter, heart pounding. She told herself she'd done the right thing. But that night, alone in her apartment, she stared at the ceiling and wondered if pushing him away had hurt more than letting him stay. The next morning, Lena's manager handed her an envelope. Inside was a request. The twins needed a temporary caregiver after discharge. And Ethan Cole had personally asked for her. If the tension is pulling you in, hit like and subscribe, because they won't be able to stay apart any longer. Lena read the letter 3 times before the words truly sank in. Temporary in-home caregiver assistance requested. Twins recently discharged from NICU. Recommendation based on first-hand life-saving involvement. Her name was printed neatly at the bottom. This wasn't coincidence. This was him. She folded the paper carefully, as if treating it roughly might make the choice disappear. The sensible thing, the safe thing, was to say no. To return to the predictable rhythm of clinking plates and anonymous faces. But the image of 2 tiny chests rising and falling inside glass walls rose unbidden in her mind. She closed her eyes and said yes. Ethan watched from the doorway as Lena stepped into the house. Not a mansion. Not what she probably expected. A quiet, modern home tucked behind tall hedges, chosen for privacy rather than extravagance. Still, the air felt heavier the moment she crossed the threshold, as if wealth itself was watching her, measuring. "You don't have to stay long," he said quickly. "Just until they're stronger." "I didn't come for the house," she replied. "I came for the babies." That answer loosened something in his chest. The twins slept most of the day. Lena moved carefully, deliberately, like someone handling something sacred. She checked monitors, warmed bottles, hummed under her breath without realizing she was doing it. Ethan watched her with a strange mix of gratitude and fear. She belonged here more than he did. At night, when the house fell silent except for soft breathing and distant city sounds, they existed in shared exhaustion. Passing bottles. Exchanging murmured updates. Avoiding eye contact longer than necessary. Until one night the smaller twin began to cry. Not hunger. Panic rippled through Ethan. His hands shook as he lifted her, fear pressing hard against his ribs. "I don't know what she needs," he admitted, voice breaking. Lena stepped in without hesitation. She adjusted the baby gently, whispering nonsense sounds, swaying slowly. The crying eased. Ethan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Thank you," he said quietly. She didn't answer right away. "You're allowed to be scared," she said finally. "It doesn't mean you're failing." The words settled between them. Days passed. Routine replaced tension. They learned each other in fragments, small truths offered accidentally. She learned he took his coffee black because sugar reminded him of business meetings that never ended. He learned she counted steps when anxious, a habit from nights when silence felt too loud. She noticed the way his hands lingered over the twins, as if afraid they might disappear. He noticed the scar on her wrist she never explained. Something fragile formed. Not love. Not yet. Trust. One afternoon, rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Lena stood at the window, arms crossed. "I don't like storms," she said quietly. He joined her, careful not to crowd her. "Neither do I." Silence stretched. "My wife died in one," he said suddenly. "That night." Lena turned slowly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He swallowed. "I never said it out loud before." She understood that kind of silence. "You don't have to carry it alone," she said. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, the wall between them felt thin. That night, exhaustion broke through restraint. They sat on the kitchen floor, backs against cabinets, twins finally asleep. "I don't know how to be this person," Ethan admitted. "I knew how to build companies. I don't know how to raise children without breaking them." Lena stared at the floor. "I don't know how to stay when things get real." Their confessions hovered in the air. Unanswered. Unresolved. But real. The call came just before dawn. A lawyer. Urgent. Controlled. Ethan stepped outside to take it. Lena watched through the glass as his shoulders stiffened. When he came back in, his face was closed off. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Just work." She nodded, though something in her tightened. That evening she overheard the word custody. He didn't know she'd heard. Didn't know that fear bloomed sharp and immediate in her chest. Because she knew how these stories went. People like her didn't stay. They were temporary. Replaceable. Later, as she prepared to leave for the night, he stopped her near the door. "I'm glad you're here," he said. She searched his face. "For how long?" He hesitated. The answer hung unspoken. She nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." She left before he could explain. From the nursery window, Ethan watched her walk into the rain, just like the night they met. And for the first time since the accident, fear settled in his chest. Not for himself, but for the possibility of losing her. Should she stay or protect her heart? "What do you think?" The first headline broke just after sunrise. Lena saw it on her phone while riding the bus to work, the city blurring past the window like it always did. She almost scrolled past it until a familiar name caught her eye. Tech mogul Ethan Cole faces temporary custody review following fatal accident. Her chest tightened. She opened the article. Legal language. Cold words. Phrases like fitness review, public scrutiny, best interest of the children. There was even a photograph, Ethan leaving his house, jaw set, eyes shadowed. No mention of her, which, she realized with a sharp pang, meant she was already being erased. Ethan read the same article an hour later, standing in his kitchen while the twins slept. His legal team had warned him this was coming. The board was nervous. Investors were nervous. A widowed CEO with premature twins wasn't the image they wanted attached to the company. They wanted stability. They wanted optics. They wanted him to look untouched. "What do you recommend?" he asked quietly into the phone. The pause. Then, discretion. Distance. Anyone who could be perceived as temporary. Ethan closed his eyes. Lena's face rose immediately in his mind, kneeling in the rain, hands steady despite fear. Temporary. The word tasted wrong. When Lena arrived at the house that evening, the air felt different. Too still. Too clean. The twins slept, unaware of the storm gathering around them. Ethan stood in the living room, suit jacket draped over a chair, tie loosened. "We need to talk," he said. Her stomach dropped. "Okay." He gestured for her to sit. She didn't. "I should have told you sooner," he began. "There's a custody review. Media pressure. Lawyers." She nodded slowly. And they're watching everything," he said. "Everyone." The silence that followed was heavy. "I see," she said finally. "Lena." She raised a hand. "You don't have to explain. I've seen this before." "This isn't that," he said quickly. "I don't want you to leave." "But you're going to ask me to," she replied. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. She packed quietly. Not much to pack. She'd never let herself settle enough to need more. In the nursery, she paused by the cribs. The twins stirred, one tiny hand stretching into the air. She bent down, brushing her finger gently against his palm. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. "Both of you." Footsteps sounded behind her. Ethan stood in the doorway, face tight with emotion he was clearly fighting. "I hate this," he said. "So do I," she replied. "Once this is over." "Don't," she said softly. "Don't make promises you might not be allowed to keep." She walked past him without looking back. The door closed with a final click that echoed through the house like a verdict. The days that followed were the darkest Lena had known in years. She returned to the diner, to the routine, to the safety of being unseen. But something had changed. The silence felt louder now. At night, rain tapped against her window, relentless, familiar. She dreamed of blood on asphalt, of tiny cries swallowed by sirens, of hands slipping from hers. Ethan lost the custody review. Not fully, but enough. The twins remained with him, but under conditions. Nannies. Oversight. Appearances. Everything monitored. He stood alone in his office one evening, staring out at the city lights. He had done everything right. And yet he had never felt more empty. For the first time, he asked himself a question that terrified him. What if protecting them means losing myself? The turning point came unexpectedly. A call from the hospital. One of the twins, Oliver, had spiked a fever. Complications. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to bring back the old fear in a crushing wave. Ethan arrived breathless, heart pounding. As doctors moved efficiently around him, the memory hit him with brutal clarity. Blood. A woman's voice telling him to stay awake. He realized something then, something undeniable. The worst moment of his life had not been survived because of his power. It had been survived because someone chose him. Chose his children. Chose to stay. He left the hospital and drove, not home, not to the office, but to the diner. The bell rang. Lena looked up. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. "You shouldn't be here," she said, the words familiar now. "I know," he replied. "But I don't want to make the same mistake twice." She crossed her arms. "What changed?" "I did," he said simply. The diner was nearly empty. Late-night quiet wrapped around them. "I thought letting you go was protecting my children," he continued. "But I was wrong." She swallowed. "You made your choice. And now I'm making another," he said. One without lawyers. Or boards. Or fear. He stepped closer. I don't want a perfect image, he said. I want a real family. Even if it scares them. Her eyes filled despite her effort to stop it. And what if I get hurt? She asked. Then I'll be there, he said. The way you were for me. Silence stretched. Then she laughed softly, shakily. You're asking a lot. I know. Rain began to fall outside. Gentle at first. Then harder. She looked toward the window. Toward the night that had started it all. You remember how we met? She asked. I think about it every day, he replied. You were bleeding, she said. Holding on with everything you had. And you didn't walk away, he said. She took a breath. I'm tired of walking away, she admitted. He didn't touch her. Didn't rush. He just stood there, open, vulnerable, waiting. She stepped forward. Months later, the rain returned, but this time, it fell softly against a different kind of silence. Lena stood in the nursery doorway, watching the twins sleep peacefully in their cribs. Ethan appeared beside her. They're dreaming, he whispered. About what? She asked. Being held, he said. She smiled. Their lives weren't perfect. The world hadn't magically softened. There were still headlines. Still scrutiny. Still scars. But there was also laughter now. Choice. The night they first met, everything had been stripped away. Status, certainty, safety. All that remained was humanity. And this time, when the rain came, neither of them faced it alone. Two broken lives didn't fix each other. They chose each other. And that made all the difference. If this story stayed with you, hit like, share how it made you feel in the comments, and subscribe, because the next story might just touch your heart even deeper.